Hi, y'all. My name is Jana Kay, and thank you so much for stopping by for this washcloth workshop number 6, where we are going to work up the moss stitch washcloth together. So let's get started on this beautiful texture that really is my favorite stitch for washcloths right now. Okay, this is what the moss stitch looks like. It is one of my favorite washcloth stitches. In fact, this is the first stitch that I learned as I was making washcloths when I began my knitting journey. And Norman at Nimble Needles has a great tutorial that I will link below. But we is part of our washcloth workshop, so I will also be doing this tutorial here and doing it very similar to his washcloth, where it's the moss stitch with a border. So the moss stitch is a 4-row repeat, but it is basically 2 rows repeated, then 2 rows repeated. And it is a basic 2 by 2 rib, except that you are alternating it so it doesn't look like ribbing. So pretty cool. If you were doing it in the round, you would do 2 rows of knit 2, purl 2, and then you would do 2 rows of purl 2, knit 2, and alternate those. But because we are doing it flat, then we are going to do knit 2, purl 2, and then when we flip it, then we'll switch the next 2 rows and it will be purl 2, knit 2, and when we turn it, it will be knit 2, purl 2. All that to say, follow along. I will put the instructions on the screen as we go along. So let us get started. And I have already done my border. So this time I did 5 rows of border. The moss stitch is reversible, so it doesn't really matter what the right and wrong side is when you get your washcloth finished. And like I said, it really is one of my favorite stitches. So I'm just using some white cotton. I think this one is Hobby Lobby. I had almost a full skein of it, and I just thought white would be really pretty. I haven't done moss stitch. I've done it in a green color, but not in this white. So I'm going to do my knit 3 for the border stitches. So 1, it's been a while since I have put out a workshop, so getting used to looking around my camera as I do this. Okay, so there are my knit stitches. I'm going to zoom it a little closer. There we go. So that, turn you a little bit. Sorry for the shaking, but there we go. All right. So now we are going to knit 2, purl 2 all the way across. Oh, by the way, I did not say it is a multiple of 4 stitches. So I have cast on 32 stitches and then 3 on one side, 3 on the other, so an extra 6 stitches for my border. So I cast on 38, and I am using a 4.5 millimeter hook or needle, and I am using 4-weight yarn. So it gives you an idea of the size, and you can see how long it is compared to my hand. So it's more than a hand length, but compared to my hands, I have small hands. So yeah, take take that into consideration. All right, here we go. So we are going to knit 2, then I bring the yarn to the front, go behind that yarn, in from right to left, and I purl, and I purl again. So if this is the first one you're catching, I'll go through this real quickly. Knit, you put the yarn in the back, and you go from left to right, and I scoop that yarn to knit it. You can, if you want, wrap it around and pull it through. And then in the description box below, I do put videos for English style knitting and purling. So for purl, yarn comes to the front, needle goes behind it. You go through the stitch from right to left, wrap it, and then pull it through. Right to left, wrap it around, and I'm trying to not get my fingers in the way. Pull it through. All right, so, and you can kind of see, so I've got my 3 knit stitches. There's a knit stitch, a knit stitch, 2 purl. If you pull this down, there's a knit stitch, and 2 purl. So that's all we're doing all the way across. So knit 2, yarn in front, purl 2. Sometimes I use my middle finger to pull the yarn down when I purl it. Sometimes I just use my first finger that has the yarn wrapped around. I think it just depends on how comfortable and secure I feel like I'm doing that. So knit 2 and then purl, because sometimes it will slip off my first finger, and it's nice to use my second finger, my middle finger, to keep that yarn taut. Maybe why I'm a tight knitter. All right, let me slide my stitches up on the needle. Knit 2, purl 2. All right, I'm going to finish this all the way to my border, and I will meet you at the end. Okay, I'm on my last repeat, so that is knit, and then knit, and then purl. There you go. There. Felt comfortable just pulling it with my first finger, and not that one. Purl. All right, and then I've got my 3 border knit stitches. So knit, knit, and knit. All right, that is row 1. Let's move on to row 2. Okay, so on this row, we're going to do the opposite, and we're going to start with purls. So I'm going to pull some yarn out. There we go. All right, so I've got my 3 border stitches first, and I'm just knitting those. And you can do anything you want for a border. It's up to you. Look up a I-cord border, a lace kind of border. I'm just doing plain old garter stitch, which is knits and purls alternated. All right, so I've got my 3 knit stitches. Now we are doing the opposite of the first row, and we are going to purl. So yarn in front. We're going to purl 2, start with purl, and then knit 2. And that is the repeat all the way to the end, is purl 2 and knit 2. purl 2, and knit 2. Make sure you get up under that purl bump or that bump from the one before. So purl 2, it's kind of not in the way there. And then knit, but you see that purl bump. So when I knit, I just need to make sure that I don't go under the purl bump. I go above it and knit 2. All right, purl 2, knit 2. I'll meet you at the end of this row. Okay, I'm on my last 2 stitches, which I just purled those 2, so I'm going to knit these 2, and then I'm going to knit the last 3, which are my border stitches. All right, that brings us to the end of row 2, and let's turn for row 3. Okay, row 3, we are going to do the same as row 2. So I'm going to knit my first 3 stitches, my border stitches. Okay, so now we're going to start this row like we did row 2 with purl. So we're going to purl 2, and then we're going to knit 2. So that's it. Just repeat row 2. You're going to purl 2, and then you're going to knit 2. So purl 2, knit 2 all the way across, and I will see you at the end of this row. Okay, I'm going to break in here and just show you. I've got the last 4 stitches that I have left to do. And on this row, the row before, we are actually putting knit or purl on top of knit, and then knit stitches on top of purl. That's why I was showing you to make sure you go on top of that purl bump when you knit. But on this row, we're actually on row 3, we're actually putting the same stitch on top. So I have this purl bump right here, and I'm actually putting a purl stitch on top of those purl bumps. And then we get to knit stitches, which if I pull that down, you can see that knit stitch right there. And pull that down, you see that knit stitches. Knit stitches kind of hide behind purls, but then we knit on top of a knit stitch. I don't know if that helps, but row 3, you are actually putting the same stitch on top of the stitch from the row below. All right, I'm on my last 3, my border stitches, so I'm going to knit them, and we'll see you then for the last row, row 4. Okay, we are on row 4. I've got my first 3 border stitches to do, so I'm going to knit, tug, knit, tug on that, tighten that. Oh wait, first stitch is always pretty loose. Okay, all right, so for this, we are going to go back to what we did on row 1, and that is to knit 2, purl 2. So we're going to knit, and this time we're doing the opposite. So we've got purl stitches, and I'm going to knit on top. So I'm going to start with knit 2, and then I'm going to purl 2 on top of those knit stitches from the row before. So now we're alternating those stitches. That's the repeat. We're repeating row 1 where we start with the knit 2 and then purl 2. Knit 2, make sure you get on top of those purl bumps. Knit 2 and then purl 2. And we'll see you at the end of this row. All right, I am on to my last 7 stitches, so I'm going to knit 2, and then I'm going to purl 2, and then that was the last repeat. So now I'm going to knit my last 3 stitches for the border, and we are done with our first repeat. So there you go. That is what it is looking like so far. It doesn't really look like anything so much, but once you get going, it really does start looking beautiful and has this amazing texture. So you can kind of see how you're stacking 2 knits on top and then 2 purls. Here we have 2 purl rows, 2 knits. We're alternating, and it just creates this gorgeous textured washcloth. So I will do a few rows and come back and show you my progress. And then of course, we'll see you at the end when I'm ready to bind off. And as always, the instructions are not only on the screen for each row, but they will be down in the description box below. All right, this is how far I have gotten. So I did, it's actually 3 whole repeats of the 4 rows. So the the 4 rows that I did for the beginning part of this tutorial, and then I did 2 more repeats. So we've got 12 rows in, and that's not including the border. And I just love that design. It is so pretty and such a great texture to it. So yeah, it's looking good. Loving it. So this is just an instant, just had an idea that y'all might want to see this. This is because I am a tight knitter, and especially binding off, am a tight bind off person. I thought I'd show you a couple of stitches of how I bind off and do it a little bit looser. So when I pull that one stitch over like that, then I pull this needle until, and then just as I'm pulling, just kind of slip that stitch off. So I have pulled on this to just make it a little bit looser. Okay, I'm coming up on my last few bind off stitches, and I want to show you
what I learned from a Very Pink Knits, which is a fantastic channel, all sorts of really helpful tips and tutorials. Okay, so what she said is that this stitch is real wide, so you slip this one over and then you go down here, and she said where the V's are, you pick up the last leg, or the left, sorry, not the last, the left leg. But I don't have very clear V stitches, but I'm gonna say this right here is my left leg. And so she says you bring it up onto the needle, and then you actually put both, and I don't know if you can see it, but you put both of those stitches back over here, and then you okay, so they're back on that needle. Then you knit those two together, and then you bind off those two stitches. So we'll see how you get to see it here first. If her little trick, there we go. Hopefully you can see all that with my awkward hands, if that works. All right, so I've done that, and now I'm gonna bind or tie that off, and we'll see. I think it does actually look a little bit better in that corner, not so stretched out. I don't have my scissors with me, but I'll show you what that is like when I show you the entire washcloth.
Okay, here is the finished washcloth. I absolutely love it. In the white, you can really tell what the pattern looks like, and these little um, diagonal ridges that run through this stitch. So there's a little bit of a close-up of what it looks like, but I absolutely love it. So I did that special ending to the bind off that I learned from Very Pink Knits, and it is down in the description box below, the link to that video. And I really love the way it looks. I think this might be my best bind off yet. And the knot is still there. You can still feel it. Of course, I haven't washed it or blocked this washcloth yet, but I do like the way it's not sticking up. It's straight across here at the top where I did bind off. I just think it's a much better square. So anyway, I love it. And yeah, thanks for joining me. Don't forget, you can always post a picture of your washcloth on my community page. I would love to see it, see how you're doing, your thoughts on the moss stitch, especially if you are going to use your washcloth, and would love to know how you think this stitch holds up. It is my favorite washcloth stitch, and this one is definitely going to be set aside for gifting. I just love it in white. I think it would be so pretty with like a body wash and or soap and cream, lotion, that kind of gift. So anyway, hope you had fun with the moss stitch. The next washcloth workshop, number 7, is going to be a crochet one. I'm going to find a pattern with crochet cables because I really do want to try that out. So yeah, look forward to you joining me for the next washcloth workshop.